The crystal city of Lumerus was unlike anything Tomas had seen before. It floated above a wide ocean that glowed with soft blue light. Great towers of shining crystal reached into the clouds, catching the sunlight and scattering it into colors that danced in the air. The whole city seemed alive, humming gently as if it breathed. Ships from every part of the galaxy came and went, their sleek shapes sliding through the shimmering gates that marked the city's borders. Tomas stood near the edge of the arrival platform, watching the scene. His transport had just landed, and the ramp was still cooling from its trip through the upper atmosphere. He had been chosen to represent Earth at the Great Peace Gathering. Earth was still new to the galactic stage, and many saw humans as strange, unpredictable newcomers. Some thought they were too young a species to be taken seriously. Tomas had been sent to change that view. Around him, delegates and guests moved in groups. Some wore long, flowing robes that sparkled with embedded crystals. Others were covered in living patterns of light that shifted across their skin. A few had metallic armor that seemed part of their bodies. The voices around him blended into a soft hum of different languages. Every few seconds, a translation device on his wrist gave him the meaning in clear words. From the center of the city, a wide causeway stretched to the arrival platform. Along it came a parade of Lumerian guards dressed in silver and white. At their head were two figures whose presence seemed to make the air brighter. Princess Mira and Princess Alira walked side by side, their tall crowns shaped like blooming flowers made of crystal. Mira's gown was deep ocean blue, while Alira's was the pale green of new leaves. Both carried themselves with calm grace. Yet their eyes were quick and searching, as if they measured everything they saw. Tomas had read about them before coming here. The princesses were known not only for their beauty, but also for their skill in guiding Lumerus through a time of change. With the peace gathering, they hoped to bring together rival worlds that had clashed for centuries. As the royal group reached the platform, music began from unseen instruments. The sound was warm and full, like sunlight turned into notes. The delegates bowed or lowered their heads in greeting. Tomas placed his hand over his chest, the Earth custom for respect. Mira noticed and gave the smallest smile before turning to greet another envoy. The gathering that followed took place in the Great Hall, a building shaped like a massive crystal shell. Inside, light poured through thousands of thin crystal panels, filling the space with a soft, shifting glow. Long tables were set with food from dozens of worlds. Platters held fruits that shone like polished gems, breads baked into spirals, and bowls of steaming broth that gave off scents Tomas had never smelled before. Tomas took his place among the representatives from smaller alliances. He sat between a short, scaled envoy from Rithos and a tall, robed figure from Andari. The talk around the table was careful and polite. Many were waiting for the speeches that would come later, when the real negotiations would begin. As the meal started, Tomas listened more than he spoke. He noticed how many of the older powers spoke to one another in private tones, their eyes often flicking toward the princesses. There was respect there, but also something sharper. It was clear not everyone in the room wanted the peace gathering to succeed. Mira and Alira moved among the tables, speaking with guests. When they reached Tomas, Mira asked about Earth in clear, unhurried words. He told them of the green forests, the deep seas, and the wide sky that could shift from gold to violet in minutes. Alira asked if Earth had ever known true peace. Tomas answered honestly that peace was rare, but humans valued it enough to keep trying. The princesses exchanged a glance, and Alira's eyes softened for a moment before they moved on. Then, almost without warning, the air trembled. At first it was so faint Tomas thought it might be part of the music, but the sound deepened into a heavy vibration that shook the floor. Crystal panels above rattled in their frames. The music stopped. A sudden burst of movement came from them. Far doors, sleek, insect-like machines rolled in, their limbs ending in sharp tools and glowing emitters. They moved with precision, spreading quickly across the hall. Lumerian guards rushed forward, but the machines sent up barriers of shimmering energy, cutting off half the hall from the exits. Gasps and cries filled the room. The delegates at Tomas's table rose, some backing away, others looking for a path out, the machines seemed to ignore most of the guests. Instead, their focus was clear. They were moving toward the dais where the princesses stood. Mira and Alira stepped back, but more machines poured in, surrounding them in a loose ring. Tomas's mind sharpened. He had seen security drills back on Earth, but this was different. The machines were not here to make a scene. They had a purpose, and it involved the princesses. He looked around at the other delegates. Many were frozen in place, eyes darting from the attackers to the blocked exits. A few guards tried to push through, but the barriers held firm. The hall that had moments before been full of music and light now felt tight and airless. The princesses' guards formed a protective wall, but the machines advanced step by step, forcing them toward the edge of the dais. The hum of the barriers grew louder, matching the beat of Tomas's own heart. He understood then that no one in the room seemed ready to act. Not the older, experienced leaders, not the guards trapped outside the barrier. The princesses were being cornered, and time was running out. Tomas's hand went to the small utility knife at his belt. It was hardly a weapon against machines, but it was something. He stepped forward into the open space between the tables. The nearest machine turned its head toward him, its single lens flickering, somewhere deep inside. Tomas felt the quiet decision settle. He could wait like the others, hoping someone else would make a move, or he could take the first step himself. The machine closest to Tomas tilted its head in a strange, sharp motion. A red light pulsed once across its lens, and the hum in the room grew louder. The princesses were still on the dais, their guards standing firm, but the attackers kept advancing, in steady, measured steps. It was as if nothing in the hall could slow them down. The delegates began to move away from the center, pressing against the crystal walls. A few shouted in their own languages, voices carrying confusion and fear. The shimmering energy barriers trapped everyone inside. Guards outside the barriers struck at them with glowing staffs, but the surface only rippled and then hardened again. Refusing to break, Tomas scanned the hall for any path that might lead him closer to the princesses. The floor between him and the dais was a maze of toppled chairs and overturned tables. Some of the food trays had spilled, sending bright-colored fruits rolling across the crystal tiles. The machine stepped over everything without pause. One of the guards inside the barrier lunged forward, his silver spear aimed at the nearest attacker. The spear struck the machine's shoulder, but instead of falling, the machine caught the weapon in its claw and twisted. The guard was thrown aside, sliding across the floor. Two more machines moved to fill the gap, their attention fixed on Mira and Alira. Tomas felt the weight of the moment pressing on him. He could see hesitation in the faces around him. Many of these beings had power, influence, and armies at their command. Yet not one stepped forward. The princesses stood calmly, but their eyes showed that they understood the danger. He tightened his grip on the utility knife at his belt. It was small, meant for cutting rope or opening sealed packs, but it was all he had. The memory of training. Exercises back on Earth came to him lessons about movement, timing, and keeping a clear mind under pressure. His instructors had said that the first step was always the hardest, because it meant breaking the stillness when everyone else waited. He moved quickly toward the side of the hall, using the crowd as cover. The machines seemed focused on their main path and did not notice him slipping between the guests as he drew closer. The hum of their energy cores grew louder, mixing with the faint sound of the ocean wind outside the hall's high windows. Mira turned her head slightly and saw him. For a brief moment their eyes met. She did not call out, but her gaze held a question. Tomas gave the smallest nod and kept moving. One of the machines suddenly shifted position, blocking his way. Its body was smooth and dark, with long legs that bent backward like a bird's. It lowered itself, as if to study him. Tomas raised the knife, not as a threat, but as a sign he was not stopping. The machine made a sharp clicking sound and stepped toward him, before it could reach him. A crash sounded from the far end of the hall. A heavy table had been knocked over by one of the guards, trying to create a barrier between the machines and the princesses. The distraction pulled the machine's focus away from Tomas, giving him the moment he needed. He darted past it, moving closer to the days. The air smelled faintly of heated metal. Energy sparks flashed near the edges of the barriers where the guards outside still tried to break through. Tomas could see small maintenance doors at the base of the days, likely leading to service passages. If he could reach them, there might be a way to get the princesses out of the hall. Alira noticed the direction of his gaze and seemed to understand. She took one slow step backward, toward the day's edge, while Mira spoke softly to the guards. Nearest her, they began shifting position, not enough to draw the machine's attention, but enough to give Tomas a narrow path. A machine lunged toward Alira, but Tomas moved first. He slid between the guard line and the machine, swinging the knife in a quick arc toward the machine's joint. The blade scraped against metal, leaving a shallow mark. It was not enough to stop it, but the strike drew the machine's attention away from Alira. The machine's claw arm swung toward him, but Tomas dropped low, rolling across the crystal floor. The move carried him to the foot of the dais. From there he could see the maintenance door, clearly a narrow panel with a small locking wheel. He reached up and twisted it. The door hissed open just enough to reveal a dim passage beyond. He looked back to the princesses. Mira gave a short command, and the nearest guard helped guide her and Alira toward him. The machines began to adjust their positions, sensing the shift. Tomas knew they had only seconds before the attackers blocked the way. As the first princess reached him, another machine leapt forward. Its legs hit the floor with a ringing sound. Tomas braced himself and swung the knife upward, aiming for the same joint he had struck before. This time the blade slid into a narrow gap, and a burst of sparks lit the air. The machine staggered back, giving them the opening they needed. Mira and Alira moved quickly into the passage. Tomas followed, pulling the maintenance door shut behind them. The last thing he saw through the narrowing gap was the machines turning sharply toward their escape route inside the passage. The air was cooler and carried the faint scent of oil and stone. The walls were lined with pipes and cables that pulsed with soft light. The hum of the machines was muffled now, though it was still present in the background. They moved quickly down the narrow corridor, the sound of their footsteps echoing. Mira walked just ahead of Tomas, while Lyra glanced back from time to time, as if making sure he was still there. No one spoke yet. The tension of the moment kept them focused on moving forward. The passage turned sharply to the right, opening into a larger service area filled with tall storage cabinets. A faint vibration in the floor told Tomas the city's engines were close beneath them. He stopped to catch his breath and listen for any sound of pursuit. For now, the machines seemed to be contained in the hall, but he knew that would not last. Finally, Alira spoke in a quiet voice. She asked why he had acted when so many others had stayed still. Tomas shook his head and said it had not been a choice he thought about. He had simply seen to people in danger and knew he could not wait for someone else to move. The princesses exchanged a look that carried both surprise and a kind of respect. Mira placed a hand lightly on his arm and said that his courage might have saved not just them, but the entire peace gathering. Tomas did not answer right away. His mind was already turning toward what would come next. The machines would not give up, and they were still trapped in a city under attack somewhere. In these service passages, there had to be a way to turn the situation around. The storage room was dim and silent except for the soft hum of the city's engines beneath the floor. Pipes along the ceiling carried steady streams of glowing liquid that pulsed like veins, lighting the space with a pale blue glow. Tomas stood near the center, breathing evenly as he thought about their next move. Mira and Alira stood side by side, their long gowns catching the light in shifting patterns. Their crowns had been left behind in the great hall, and without them they seemed less like distant royalty and more like determined leaders ready to face danger. "We cannot stay here," Mira said in a steady voice. "The machines will search every part of the city. They will find this place soon." Tomas nodded. "Then we move before they do." He scanned the room for another exit against the far wall. A narrow steel door stood slightly open, showing a glimpse of a steep staircase leading downward. A small sign in Lumerian script glowed above it. Alira read it aloud. "Maintenance shaft, access to lower engineering decks. Tomas stepped toward the door, but paused. If we go down, we may be heading closer to the machine's power source. It could be dangerous. Alira tilted her head. And if we stay here, we will be found without a way to defend ourselves. Her words were simple truth. Tomas opened the door fully, and a cool draft of air rushed past them. The staircase was made of metal mesh, and each step rang faintly. Under their feet as they began to descend, the walls closed in around them. The hum of the engines growing louder with every level. The air smelled faintly of heated stone and the mineral scent of the ocean far below. The only light came from thin strips along the walls, casting long shadows. Tomas kept his hand near the knife at his belt, listening for any sign of pursuit. Halfway down, the staircase ended at a landing that opened into a broad tunnel. This new space was warmer, with streams of steam rising from vents in the floor. The tunnel stretched far into the distance, lined with cables as thick as tree trunks. Somewhere ahead, the sound of rushing water echoed faintly. They walked quickly but carefully. Mira stayed close to the wall, her eyes scanning every movement in the shadows. Alira moved with silent steps, glancing back often to watch their rear. Tomas kept his attention forward, his senses alert for danger. As they moved, they passed a small control station built into the wall. Its panels glowed with lines of symbols and moving shapes. Tomas slowed and studied it. He had no training with Lumerian systems, but he could see that some of the displays were flashing in a repeating pattern. "What is it?" Mira asked. "Warning signals," Alira answered. "Parts of the city's security grid are shutting down. It means the machines are spreading." Tomas looked at the display more closely. Several red marks were moving slowly toward the center of the city. "They are not just looking for you," he said quietly. "They are taking control of the city's systems." The thought brought a new weight to the situation. If the attackers gained full control, they could trap every delegate, disable the city's defenses, and perhaps even cause it to fall from the sky. "We have to find a way to stop them," Tomas said. Alira frowned. "The main control hub is near the Royal Defense Chamber, but it is heavily guarded in times of peace. If the machines reach it first, she left the rest unsaid. Tomas considered their options. Waiting for help would mean letting the attackers finish their work. Escaping the city would save them, but leave everyone else at risk. He knew the choice he had to make, even if it was not the safest. "We go to the control hub," he said firmly. "If we can reach it first, we can shut them out of the city's systems." Mira studied him for a moment. "You are not Lumerian. This is not your fight." Tomas met her gaze. "If I walk away, it will be everyone's loss, not just yours." "I will not do that." There was a pause, and then Mira gave a slow nod. "Then we go together." They continued along the tunnel, turning down a side passage that sloped upward. The floor here was smoother, with markings showing it had been used for quick movement between the lower decks. And the upper platforms, faint vibrations in the floor, told Tomas that machinery was active nearby. The passage opened into a wider chamber filled with huge crystal pillars. Between them ran streams of energy that pulsed like lightning trapped in glass. The air was warmer here, carrying a faint scent of metal and stone. "This is part of the power relay," Alira explained in a low voice. "From here, energy flows to the city's defense systems." Tomas studied the pillars. If the machines gained control here, they could cut off all defenses before we reached the hub. They moved carefully between the pillars, staying in the shadows. The hum of the city's engines was loud here, almost like the sound of waves pounding on shore. As they reached the far side, a faint metallic scraping echoed from the next passage. Tomas raised his hand, signaling them to stop. They waited. In silence, the scraping grew louder, followed by the low whir of servos. A shadow moved along the wall ahead, long legs, a narrow body, and the cold gleam of a mechanical lens. One of the machines was here. Tomas scanned the room for options. There was no easy way around, and going back would waste precious time. The only choice was to face it. He turned to the princesses. "Stay behind the pillar until I move. If I can draw it toward me, you go for the passage on the other side." Alira started to protest, but Mira touched her arm. "We will follow his lead." Tomas stepped out from the pillar, moving slowly to draw the machine's attention. Its lens locked on him instantly, and a thin beam of red light swept over his body. Then it began to move toward him, its steps clicking softly on the crystal floor. When it was close enough, Tomas feinted to the side and ran, leading it away from the passage. The machine followed, quick but not fast enough to match his sudden turns. He circled around one of the pillars, making the machine adjust its path. The brief delay was all Mira and Illyra needed to slip past. Once they were clear, Tomas made a sharp dash toward the far passage and dove through just as the machine lunged. Its claw scraped the floor where he had been standing a moment before. He landed on his side but rolled to his feet, following the princesses into the safety of the next corridor. The hum of the relay faded as they moved deeper into the passage. Ahead, the corridor widened, and faint light from the upper levels shone down. They were moving toward the heart of the city now, where the control hub waited. Mira glanced at Tomas. "You took a risk most would not take." Tomas gave a small smile. "Sometimes the risk is worth it if it means keeping the path open." They pressed on, knowing the hardest part of the journey was still ahead. The corridor ahead grew brighter as Tomas, Mira, and Illyra moved upward toward the center of the crystal city. The smooth crystal walls reflected their figures in faint shapes. The hum of machinery under the floor gave way to the distant sounds of the upper level's footsteps, voices, and the muted clang of tools. They passed a small inspection post where frightened maintenance workers stood by a control panel. When they saw the princesses, they straightened quickly and bowed. Mira asked in a calm voice if the path to the control hub was clear. The workers shook their heads. They explained that several machines had broken through the upper access points and were moving toward the heart of the city. Tomas stepped closer. "Is there another way around them?" One worker hesitated, then pointed toward a side passage. "This path leads to a maintenance lift. It can take you close to the hub without crossing the main hallways, but the lift control is inside a locked service bay." Illyra looked at Tomas. "Locked?" The worker nodded. "We closed it to keep the machines out, but if you open it from the inside, it will be yours to use." They thanked the workers and moved into the side passage. It was narrower and darker than the main corridors. With pipes and thick cables running along both sides, the air here was warmer, carrying the faint scent of oil. The sound of machinery was louder, suggesting they were close to a working engine or power relay. At the end of the passage, they found a wide metal door with a locking wheel at its center. Tomas tried it, but the wheel did not move. The locking mechanism was strong, made to keep out anything without the correct key. Illyra studied the control panel beside the door. "It responds to a coded signal. Without the code, we must open it manually." Tomas checked the edges of the door and found a narrow gap where the hinges met the frame. He slid his knife into it, working it gently. The door resisted at first, but with steady pressure and a strong pull from Mira on the wheel, the lock finally gave way. The door swung open with a low groan of metal dot inside. The service bay was filled with tall racks of equipment, tool cases, and heavy crates. A small lift platform stood in the center, connected to rails that disappeared upward into the ceiling. The control panel beside it blinked with a slow, steady light before they could approach the lift. A soft metallic click echoed from the shadows between the racks. Tomas froze, scanning the space. Out of the dim light stepped a machine, its lens glowing faint red. This one was smaller than the others, but quicker, its limbs ending in fine grasping tools instead of claws. The machine darted forward, moving with sudden speed. Tomas stepped in front of the princesses, raising his knife. The machine swerved to the side, trying to slip past him toward the lift controls. Tomas reacted instantly. He swung low, catching one of its thin legs. The machine stumbled, but it was fast, recovering with a quick spin. It reached for the control panel, its tools whirring. Mira moved then, grabbing a long metal rod from a nearby tool rack. She swung it in a clean arc, striking the machine's arm. The impact knocked it away from the panel. Illyra stepped in from the other side, pressing a heavy crate against its body to pin it. Tomas drove his knife into the gap between the machine's upper plates. Sparks flashed as the machine twitched once and then went still. He pulled the blade free and stepped back. They pushed the machine aside, clearing the way to the lift. Tomas checked the control panel. "It still works," he said. "We can reach the hub in one trip." The platform shuddered as it rose, carrying them upward through a narrow shaft. The walls here were plain crystal and metal, lit only by small strips of light. The hum of the lift was steady, but Tomas could not shake the feeling that something was moving in the shaft above them. When the lift stopped, they stepped into a circular corridor lined with tall doors. At the far end, a large set of reinforced crystal gates marked the entrance to the control hub. 2 Lumerian guards stood before it, their silver armor dented and marked from a fight. The guards recognized the princesses immediately and bowed. Mira asked if the hub was secure. One guard replied that they had held it so far, but the machines had been testing the defenses for several minutes, as if on cue. The ground trembled slightly. A sharp clang echoed from the far corridor behind them. The guards moved quickly to seal the gates, but before they could lock them, 3 of the tall, insect-like machines appeared in the doorway. The machines advanced, their movement steady and in perfect sync. Tomas stepped forward beside the guards. There was no time to plan, only to act. One of the guards thrust his spear at the nearest machine, but it caught the weapon and twisted it from his hands. Tomas lunged at its side, striking at the joint between its upper and lower limbs. The second machine tried to move past him, but Mira swung the same metal rod she had used earlier, striking its head and forcing it back. Alira pulled a spare spear from the wall rack and handed it to Tomas with the weapon's longer reach. Tomas kept the machines from closing in. He targeted the gaps in their armor, aiming for the points where movement plates met. Sparks flew with each strike. The guards joined in, forming a wall with their spears. Finally, one of Tomas's thrusts pierced deep into the first machine's core. It collapsed, its limbs folding inward. The other two stepped back, their lenses flickering as if recalculating. Then, without warning, they retreated down the corridor. The guards sealed the gates fully this time, locking the heavy crystal bars into place. The hum of the city's engines was louder here, mixed with the steady rhythm of the hub's power systems. Inside, the control hub was a wide chamber with a central platform surrounded by glowing consoles. Alira stepped to one of the panels, her hands moving quickly over the controls. Symbols scrolled across the surface, and the soft light reflected in her focused eyes. "I can see where the machines have taken control," she said. "If we act now, we can cut them out before they reach the main defense core." Tomas stood watch near the door, the spear in hand. He knew the machines would not stop trying to get in. Time was short. Mira looked at him and spoke with quiet certainty. "If this works, the city will be safe again. If it fails, we will have only moments before they take everything." Tomas nodded once. "Then let us make it work." Inside the control hub, the air was cool and filled with the steady hum of the city's systems. Lines of soft blue light ran across the floor and up the walls, leading to the central platform where Alira worked at the glowing console. Mira stood nearby, reading the data on a second panel. Tomas kept his eyes on the reinforced gates, listening for any sound of the machines returning. Alira's hands moved quickly over the smooth surface. Symbols flashed past, some green, some red. "I am shutting down the pathways the machines are using to reach the defense core," she said. "But they are faster than expected. Each time I block a route, they try another." Mira turned to Tomas. "There's a direct control override deep under this chamber. If we activate it, we can cut their access completely. But it must be done by hand." Tomas stepped closer. "Where is it?" Alira pointed to a small panel at the base of the console. Tomas knelt and opened it, revealing a narrow tunnel that sloped downward. The glow from the hub reached only a short distance inside before fading into darkness. "This leads to the old maintenance levels," Alira explained. "The override is in a hidden chamber at the far end. It was built long before the current systems and cannot be reached from the main corridors." Mira added, It is safe from remote attacks, but it is not safe from anyone who can find it. Tomas looked into the passage. If this is the only way to stop them, I will go. Mira shook her head. You should not go alone. The path may have traps or collapsed areas. I will come with you. Alira glanced at the gate, then back to them. I will remain here to hold control of the hub as long as I can. If the machines break through before you return, I will send a signal. Tomas agreed. Seal the panel after we enter. If something follows us, it will not reach you easily. They stepped into the narrow tunnel. The walls were made of smooth stone reinforced with metal ribs. The ceiling was low, forcing Tomas to bend slightly as he walked. The sound of the hub's machinery faded quickly, replaced by a deep, slow rhythm like a heartbeat. The path sloped steadily downward, twisting left and right in some places. The floor was wet from condensation. In others, small vents in the walls released warm air that carried the faint scent of minerals. After a few minutes, the tunnel widened into a chamber lit by faint crystals set into the ceiling. Rows of old control panels lined the walls, their surfaces covered in dust. Mira ran her fingers over one. These were part of the city's first power system. They were abandoned when the crystal relays were built. Tomas checked the room. Carefully, any sign of movement. Mira shook her head. Not yet. They found another opening at the far end and continued. This new passage was rougher, with jagged stone showing between the metal supports. The air was warmer here, and a faint vibration came through the floor. They walked in silence for several minutes until they reached a heavy door with a faded emblem. Mira pressed a small crystal on the wall, and the door slid open with a slow, grinding sound. Beyond it was the hidden chamber. It was small but filled with intricate machinery. At the center stood a single control pedestal made of polished metal, its surface marked with glowing lines. Mira stepped forward. This is the manual override. If we turn the control key, the system will cut all outside access instantly. Tomas looked around the room. The walls were thick and smooth, with no other doors. If it is so well hidden, why would the machines come here? As if in answer, a faint click echoed through the chamber. Tomas turned toward the doorway and saw a shadow moving in the tunnel. The sound grew sharper metal on stone. Mira's eyes narrowed. They have tracked us. Tomas moved to the entrance. The tunnel outside was dim, but the glow of a single red lens appeared, followed by the thin frame of a small machine behind. It came another, slightly larger, its limbs moving with careful precision. They will try to stop us from using the override, Tomas said. The first machine entered quickly, its movements sharp and direct. Tomas met it halfway, striking low. With his knife, the blade caught one leg, slowing it. Mira grabbed a heavy tool from the wall and struck the machine's side, sending it crashing into the doorway. The second machine tried to push past, but Tomas blocked it with a metal bar he pulled from the floor supports. The bar bent under the pressure, but it was enough to keep the machine from reaching the pedestal. Mira turned the control key. A deep, resonant hum filled the chamber as the lines on the pedestal brightened. The light pulsed once, then again, before settling into a steady glow. It is done, she said. The override is active. They cannot control the defenses now. The larger machine suddenly surged forward, its lens flashing. Tomas stepped in front of Mira, swinging the metal bar in a wide arc. The bar struck the machine's head, and it fell backward, landing hard on the floor. The sound echoed through the tunnel. The first machine tried to rise, but Tomas drove his knife into its core. Sparks leapt from the wound, and the machine went still. Breathing hard, Tomas stepped back. Mira touched his arm briefly in thanks. You did not hesitate. He looked toward the doorway. We should return to Alira before more come. They retraced their steps quickly. The tunnel seemed darker now, though the glow from the crystals was unchanged. The hum from the city's engines grew louder as they neared the hub. When they reached the small panel, it slid open to reveal Alira, waiting for them. Her face showed relief. The override worked. The machines stopped trying to take the core, but they are still attacking other areas. Tomas stepped into the hub. Then we help defend it until the guards can clear the rest. Mira looked at both of them. The city still stands because we acted before it was too late. Now we must finish this. They turned toward the sealed gates, ready to face whatever came next. The gates of the hub shook again as heavy strikes landed from the other side. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the blue lights along the walls flickered for a moment before steadying. Alira checked the main display. The overriders locked out their control of the defenses, but they are still inside the city. They are moving toward the power relays. If they destroy them, the entire shield system will collapse. Mira studied the map on the side panel. There's one place where we can stop them. The central corridor to the relays is narrow. If we trap them there, the defense towers can hit all of them at once. Tomas stepped closer. How do we trap them? Alira's fingers moved quickly over the controls. I can seal both ends of the corridor, but the manual locks must be engaged in person. One is here in the hub. The other is at the far end near the relay chambers. Tomas looked at the map. If I go to the far lock, the machines will see me. Mira nodded. They will try to stop you before you can engage it. But if they chase you into the corridor and I seal the gates, they will be caught inside. Alira glanced at them both. This is dangerous. The timing must be exact. If the gates close too early, some will escape. If they close too late, you will be inside with them. Tomas gave a short nod. I will make it. Mira handed him a small crystal. Press this when you reach the far lock. That will be my signal to seal the gates. Tomas checked his knife and the metal bar he had taken from the tunnel earlier. Then he ran to the side exit of the hub. The narrow hall beyond led into the larger corridors of the city. The sound of the gates behind him grew faint, replaced by the distant mechanical rhythm of the enemy. The corridor walls were marked with glowing lines that guided him toward the relay chamber. The air was warm, and faint vibrations came through the floor as the defense tower shifted into position. Tomas reached the first corner and slowed round the bend. He saw the first group of machines moving in formation. They were tall, with thin legs and long arms tipped with tools that glinted in the light. At the center was a heavier unit that moved with steady, deliberate steps. The moment they saw him, the front machines broke formation and moved faster. Tomas turned and ran toward the relay passage. Their metal steps rang against the floor, closing the distance. He passed one side hall and threw a loose piece of metal onto the floor there, hoping to distract some of them. But the sound of pursuit stayed strong behind and died at last. He saw the far gate ahead. The manual lock was a thick lever set into the wall. He reached it and pressed the signal crystal in his hand. A faint pulse of light ran through it before fading. Far behind him, Mira received the signal. She moved quickly to the hub's gate controls and began the closing sequence. The first gate is closing, she said to Elira. Elira watched the map closely. The machines are all in the corridor. Close the second gate now. Tomas pulled the lever at the far lock. A deep mechanical sound echoed through the walls as the heavy gate began to slide down from the ceiling. The pursuing machines were only a few steps away. He stepped back, letting them enter as much as possible before the gate touched the floor. The last one tried to slip under, but the edge of the gate pinned its arm before it could pass. Sparks flashed as it struggled. Then the arm broke free, leaving the machine trapped on the other side. A loud hum filled the corridor as the defense towers activated. From hidden panels along the walls, bright streams of energy shot out, striking the machines. One by one they fell, their movements jerking and slowing until they lay still. In the hub, Alira let out a slow breath. It worked. The corridor is clear. That was the largest group still inside the city. Mira's voice was calm but firm. The remaining ones will be scattered. We can deal with them one by one. Tomas leaned against the wall for a moment, catching his breath. The air smelled faintly of heated metal. He walked back toward the hub, stepping around the still forms of the machines. When he returned, the gates opened just enough for him to slip inside. Alira met him at the entrance. You made it. Mira stood by the console, adjusting the defense patterns. There is still one problem. The largest machine, the one controlling the others, is still active. It is outside the shield but is trying to break through again. If it succeeds, all this will start over. Tomas asked, Can the towers destroy it? Alira shook her head. It is shielded. The only way is to overload the main power crystal and release the energy in one burst. Mira looked at Tomas. But if we do that, someone must be at the crystal chamber to trigger the release. The chamber will not survive the burst. Tomas met her gaze. Then I will do it. Alira spoke quickly. If the burst is strong enough, it will destroy the largest machine and everything nearby. But you must reach the chamber before it gets too close. Mira's voice was quiet but steady. We will help you reach it. The three of them prepared quickly. Tomas took a fresh blade from the storage rack. Mira carried a small pack of crystal tools, and Alira set the defense towers to give them as much cover as possible. As they stepped out of the hub together, the sound of the distant giant machine echoed through the streets like the beating of a massive drum. The air felt heavy, as if the city itself was holding its breath. They moved quickly through the empty corridors toward the crystal chamber, knowing the final fight was close. The corridors echoed with heavy footsteps as Tomas, Mira, and Alira hurried toward the crystal chamber. The city around them seemed alive with tension. The hum of machines was louder now, mixing with distant crashes and the low rumble of the giant attacker approaching. Tomas felt a sharp pulse of fear, but he pushed it aside. This was the moment everything depended on. He looked at Mira and Alira. Their faces were calm but determined. No one spoke. They moved as one through the winding halls, guided by the glowing lines along the walls. Ahead, the chamber doors loomed, tall and covered with shining runes. Mira touched the control panel beside the door, and it slid open silently. Inside, the chamber was vast, filled with the soft light of the great power crystal. At its center, the crystal pulsed slowly, casting long shadows on the walls. But the peaceful glow was broken by the presence of the giant machine. It was taller than any Tomas had seen, its body covered with dark plates that shimmered like glass. Its many legs tapped the floor in a steady rhythm. The giant's glowing red eyes locked on the crystal. Alira whispered, "It is trying to absorb the power. If it succeeds, the city's shields will fail, and the machines will flood in." Mira stepped forward. "We must stop it now." Tomas nodded. He felt the weight of the knife at his belt and the small crystal key in his hand. The key was their last hope to trigger the overload and destroy the giant machine before it could take control. The giant machine noticed them and turned its many eyes toward the trio. It moved forward slowly, but with force. Tomas and the princesses held their ground. The giant struck first, swinging a heavy arm that shattered a pillar nearby. Tomas dodged, rolling behind a smaller crystal stand. Mira and Alira moved to flank the machine, drawing its attention away from Tomas. Tomas sprinted toward the power crystal, the giant's footsteps shaking the floor beneath him. Sparks flew from broken wires and cracked panels. The air was thick. With energy dot at the base of the crystal stood the activation console. Tomas reached it and pressed the crystal key into a small slot. A soft hum rose as the system powered up dot behind him. Mira and Alira kept the giant machine busy, striking at its legs and arms with tools and sharp objects they found nearby. The giant's movement slowed but did not stop. Tomas's hands flew over the console, following Alira's earlier instructions. The crystal began to glow brighter, pulses growing faster and stronger. Energy filled the chamber, humming through every surface dot. Suddenly, the giant lunged toward Tomas, its arm raised to strike. Tomas hit the final command and dove to the side. The crystal burst with brilliant light. Waves of energy shot outward, filling the chamber with a dazzling glow. The giant machine screamed in a strange mechanical sound as the energy struck at full force. The walls trembled, and dust rained from the ceiling. Tomas shielded his eyes, feeling the heat of the release wash over him. When the light faded, the giant machine lay broken and silent. Pieces of shattered metal and glass littered the floor. The crystal's glow returned to a steady pulse, softer and calm. Mira and Alira approached Tomas, their faces full of relief. "You did it," Mira said simply. Alira smiled. "The city is safe." Tomas stood, breathing hard but smiling back. "We did it together." Outside the chamber, The hum of the city's systems grew steady and strong once again. The machines that remained fled into the shadows, no longer able to control the city. The princesses looked at Tomas with new respect and gratitude. Mira said, "You showed courage when others hesitated. You saved our people and this city." Tomas shook his head. "I just did what anyone should do." Alira nodded, "But not everyone would have." The three of them left the crystal chamber and walked back toward the great hall. The city's lights shone brighter now, reflecting the new hope that had returned. As they stepped into the sunlight, Tomas looked up at the sky. The alien princesses were no longer distant rulers but allies and friends. This day would be remembered not just for the battle fought, but for the courage of one human who stood when it mattered most.